Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a what I read video. So I'll be honest with you, cards on the table, I actually haven't read a ton these last couple months, not as much as I would like, which is why this video is a little late in getting put out. I only read 3 books and 6 volumes of manga, which for some people probably is a lot, but is definitely a lot less than my last reading wrap up in the wintertime. Regardless, I do actually have a lot to say about these books, so I figured I would go ahead and film this video now, so let's get right on into it. So the first book I want to talk about is Lolita. So I did make another video on my channel that is more focused on the naming of the fashion Lolita and its connections to the book, and if there are any at all. But I realized I didn't really talk about a lot of key aspects of this book. Tyler from last week Lolita News did a big review of the book and kind of talking about its perception over time, and there are things that I agree and disagree in her video. So I totally think the value of Lolita comes from it being more of a case study into the mentality of a PD, and kind of see what they go through mentally to justify their actions and what happens when they finally get their way. I personally actually do like the writing style. I think that one key aspect of Lolita is the fact that you are supposed to see Humbert as someone who is extremely charming. But at the same time, you're not supposed to romanticize him and instead see that someone who's very charming and well-spoken can still be a monster deep down. I think that really is something that attracts me personally to studies of true crime, especially in cases of things like Ted Bundy and the Extremely Wicked movie. You start off by seeing him more as like an action hero and someone that you almost want to root for, but you know that he did all these terrible things, and it isn't until the end when it sort of all comes to light that you realize just how much you've been duped into believing him. And I think that's a lesson that the monsters of our society aren't like gross freaks that live in the shadows. They're often people that we might find desirable or attractive in normal situations, but they want a level of control and domination that's not something anyone could ever consent to with any level of decency. I do feel like I maybe didn't do my full due diligence in studying Nabokov's history. I just kind of read his afterword in this edition of Lolita and took him saying, yeah, I wrote this, it doesn't have any moral, as him wanting to just explore this topic in literature, and I didn't really realize his track record with having these themes in his other works. As Tyler said in her video, we can't look into the mind of a dead man, so if Nabokov had any PD tendencies, we can't really figure that out or do anything about it now. I guess my final verdict is, do I like this book? It's yes and no. I think if you have to read this in class, you will probably be fine. Even though this deals with a very serious topic, I don't think that any of the explicit scenes are that explicit or very triggering. There was only like 1 or 2 moments where I was kind of like a little grossed out by it. I gave this 3.5 stars, and I think that star ranking is more about what I think this has impacted me intellectually as opposed to like on an enjoyment level. So the next book I wanted to talk about is Lilith's Brood, and this is actually 3 books in one. So this is a sci-fi novel that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where nuclear war has wiped off most life on Earth, and the remainder of the humans have been taken in by an alien race called the Oncali to help repopulate Earth through interspecies breeding. I would say some of the huge themes in this book are, what does it mean to be human? Are humans always destined to destroy one another? Do we have a fatal flaw that makes us who we are as humans but also sets us down this path to always destroy each other? What would set humans apart from aliens if we ever met another race that was on the same level of intellect as us? And would our relationships with aliens ever fall apart because of a human desire for domination? I think for all the good questions that this book does raise, for me it was kind of like, so, a huge debate in the book is if we breed in the aliens, then we might lose our humanity, but we also get to repopulate the Earth. And I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer, like, yes, you should fuck the aliens. And I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean, like, have at it, dude. First of all, the aliens are very pacifist, they're very anti-violence and very egalitarian. Second, it's not like they aren't human-like they have 2 arms, 2 legs, a face area, and they walk upright. So it's not like they are like a weird tentacle slug thing. I feel like it would be relatively easy to make that romantic connection, and people in the book do make that romantic connection, because the second and third parts of the book are about the human and alien hybrids. I guess a huge part for me was like, okay, I know where I stand on this. Now I have to read a bunch of people making not the choice that I would make and acting like that's the normal response. And all I'm saying is if they act like the Oncali, I will happily accept our alien overlords. Also, apparently this might be getting a pilot to be adapted into a series on Amazon Video, which I definitely would be interested in checking out. One big critique that I would like them to expand on more in the TV series, hopefully, is to have more queer representation. One thing is that there's literally a 3rd gender in the Oncali species, and the family units are 2 males, 2 females, and then this 3rd gender mate. But throughout the book, there's literally no interactions between the 2 same-sex pairings in the family unit and the 3rd gender. I think there's maybe like one scene where there's a human guy and an Oncali guy that have a more intimate, close relationship, but it's definitely seen as more familial bonding over romantic. There's also a side character in the first book who, for me, I think you could read between the lines as being lesbian coded, but it all feels very heterosexual coded for the most part. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities, so hopefully the TV version will fix that. This book took me a really long time, like 4 months to power through because it is quite large. I did definitely really love the ending though. I think the last book in total was definitely my favorite out of the 3. It has a lot more of a hopeful vibe, and Jordas as a main character is really unique and interesting. I did like this book, maybe not love it. It's probably going to be closer to like a 3.5 or 4 star for me. But if you're interested in what I've talked about so far, then I would definitely try and pick it up. Okay, going from a very long book to quite a short book, this is How to Give Up Plastic. This book is a little over 200 pages, and it's a very, very practical guide from a high-up member of Greenpeace talking about his experiences, basically seeing the devastation humans have caused to our planet because of our dependence on plastic. And he gives a lot of guidance on how we can change our habits to limit single-use plastic in our lives. I feel the overall tone of this book was more hopeful versus doom and gloom, which really, if you want to inspire people to feel that what they're fighting for is worthwhile, that's definitely the way you want to go. I think if you want something to use as a guide to begin being more eco-friendly, then this is a really good place to start, and there's a lot of resources in this book that are good jumping off points. So the last set of books that I read are some volumes of the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga. This is the omnibus version of 4, 5, and 6. I just love these omnibus versions. I think that having like these condensed versions are just so much easier to read than individual manga volumes. I read 1 through 6 of the original DM manga, and I read all of these originally to go along with a Dark Side of Dimensions anniversary readathon, but then I ended up not really liking the footage that I had gotten, so I decided to not put that video out. But I can still report on what I read then. So the section I read is pretty much everything that's encompassed in the original Toei Season 0 anime that never made it into the West. For those of you who are not familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh, this section of the manga doesn't really focus on the traditional Yu-Gi-Oh card game, but instead has Yugi use a variety of different games to fight off a bunch of different villains of the week. The best chapters by far, in my opinion, are the Death Tea arc, which is when he has his second fight against Kaiba, and I really, really enjoyed this duel. I actually went back and re-watched the first episode of the anime, which is a kind of condensed version of Yugi's first and second fights in the manga, and there was so much more detail in the Death Tea battle that I just didn't realize was there. So it's brought up in the Death Tea arc that the bonds that Yugi has with his friends are supposed to be that even if one of them feels weak, when they come together they can overcome anything. And the signature move that Yugi uses in this duel is summoning Exodia, which is literally a monster that is made up of a bunch of little pieces, and when you put them together, they are unstoppable. And I felt like when I was reading the manga, I like cracked the code in realizing this. In rewatching the anime, I definitely didn't get this vibe spelled out as hard, and it just makes the manga even more brilliant to me. Also, I do not know how far in advance Takashi was planning everything to happen in the manga, but there is some stuff very early on that is literally the basis for the lore in the Millennium World arc, which is the final arc of the manga, and I just feel like everything is so well connected. So with that, those are all of the books that I have read in the last couple months. I hope that this summertime I can be a little bit more productive so I can reach my yearly goal for 2021. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you aren't already, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!